What they did was marry the criminal culture in jail onto the street culture and made it part of hip-hop.
Professor Griff, formerly of Public Enemy, described in a speech on how prison culture and gang life was tied onto hip-hop to condition a culture into destruction. This forced artists who otherwise was not connected to gang life to stage themselves into promoting it to change their image and boost publicity. Doing this was met with dire consequences due to the elements involved in promoting gang life. In this video, we will take a look into how gangs were culturally conditioned and how it was tied into music, looking at artists before and after faking to be a gangster. The Bloods and Crips of Los Angeles are some of the most prominent gangs in driving a society culturally into a gang mentality. The Crips are one of the largest and most violent associations of street gangs within the United States. It predates the Bloods, beginning in 1969. Within America, the Crips have over 35,000 members. The gang became associated with wearing blue clothes to represent themselves since 1973. The Piru Bloods were formed in 1969 to provide protection against the Crips. They wore red to represent themselves. The rivalry between the Crips and the Bloods accounts for a majority of the gang-related murders within southern Los Angeles. The Iran-Contra affair took place in the 1980s. This was a United States scandal which revealed complicity between US intelligence with drug trafficking into the United States, which sparked the crack epidemic of the 1980s.
There have been startling accusations that the United States government itself may have actually helped bring drugs into this country.
This epidemic has been linked by journalists such as Gary Webb as having its origins in a conflict in Nicaragua. Importation of cocaine increased tenfold during this time to supply the demand of the newly introduced crack within the inner cities. A major kingpin who became a big supplier to the Bloods and Crips within Los Angeles was Freeway Rick Ross. Freeway Rick Ross was a drug kingpin within Los Angeles who was connected to the Iran-Contra scandal. He was one of the main suppliers of the Bloods and Crips, with the drug trade increasing the violence between the gangs. Freeway Rick Ross discovered his supplier Danilo Blandón had been a Nicaraguan drug trafficker with connections to the CIA, which was revealed in a Dark Alliance series by Gary Webb.
He's getting into the black thing down in LA, and the guy up in San Francisco said, "What are you talking about?" And he said, "You know, we're selling it to the blacks." He said, "You go into these neighborhoods, there's no cops, you can sell it where you want, and when they start killing each other, nobody cares."
Freeway Rick Ross also claimed this connection began supplying him with fully automatic weapons, which were then put out onto the street, militarizing the gangs. The laws surrounding the crack epidemic had been reconstructed by Joe Biden in 1986, after he crafted a bipartisan legislation bill signed into law by President Ronald Reagan, which treated crack cocaine as significantly worse than powder cocaine, giving lengthy sentences for smaller amounts. This increased the boom in the privatized prison market, with prison culture then being attached to the gangs, which then tied itself onto music as a result.
What they got going on is the whole prison industrial complex. They flushed all the prisons with blacks and Latinos, and they made them all privatized so they can get money.
The privatized prisons of America makes money off of every inmate incarcerated. It had a gradual increase of earnings of 32% more in revenue in each year since the 1980s. Private prison contracts in the United States has a combined revenue of $3.5 billion just within the past decade. A large portion of inmates were young gang members caught within the drug trade with the newly introduced drug laws of the 1980s following the Iran-Contra affair. The incarcerated convicts became indoctrinated with prison culture and further criminality. Sagging, which some people argue is the N-word spelled backwards, was a part of prison fashion culture where men wore baggy pants displaying their underwear. The style originated in prison, as inmates were often given uniforms that were several sizes too big for them, and being not allowed to wear belts, the fashion became with wearing the trousers below their waist. Following the release from prison with them being conditioned into this style, the former convicts continued to wear clothes like this, which then attached itself onto gang culture and music as a result. In the 1980s and the 1990s, the boom in gangster rap occurred, which adopted and promoted gang and prison culture, making it become mainstream. This then forced artists to begin with faking a gangster lifestyle to remain relevant and sell records. Suge Knight was one of the key people in getting gangster rap to go mainstream. Suge Knight was an American music executive behind the gangster rap record label Death Row Records. The label had artists such as Snoop Dogg, who claimed to be a Crip, while Suge Knight revealed that Snoop Dogg had actually purchased his way into the gang to have association for his image.
It's only one person that paid money to be involved in the gang, and that was Snoop.
Snoop paid to be in a gang.
You saying Snoop Dogg paid to get into the gang?
Yeah, he paid to be in the gang.
Suge Knight had also purchased his way into the Piru Blood gang to give himself a gangster persona. Suge Knight grew up in a Piru Blood territory of Compton, which belonged to the MOB Pirus, which stands for Members of the Blood. Suge Knight was not involved in gang activity while growing up and actually went to college. Attending college on a football scholarship, he soon quit football and got involved in the music industry by bodyguarding Bobby Brown. Eventually, he met artists the DOC and Dr. Dre in the early 1990s who were signed to Eazy-E's record label Ruthless Records. Eazy-E was a legitimate drug dealer and Crip, being associated to the Kelly Park Compton Crips. Suge Knight began to pay the MOB Blood Pirus of Compton to become his henchman, where he then muscled up on Eazy-E, forcing him to release Dr. Dre from the label. Suge Knight and Dr. Dre, along with help from convicted inmate Harry O, then went on to form Death Row Records. Suge Knight started to appear on magazine covers in gang colours and wore jewellery representing the gang. He turned into a gangster after not being one while growing up. He became associated with a further criminal underworld between 1992 and 1993. The mob Pirus had planned to kidnap Suge Knight and hold him hostage. Former Compton police officer Reggie Wright Jr., who grew up in the same blood neighborhood as Suge Knight, informed Suge Knight of the plot. Reggie Wright Jr. is the son to Reggie Wright Sr., who was the head of Compton's gang division. Suge Knight then gave Reggie Wright Jr. $300,000 to start Right Way's Protective Services, which supplied security for the label. Active police officers then began to supply security for the label. Former LA detective Russell Paul claimed that Suge Knight then became connected to the blood gang members of the LAPD Rampart scandal, which was a police corruption scandal where police officers were living a double life as gang members, being involved in crimes on the street. Some of the officers involved in the scandal included David Mack and Rafael Perez, who were alleged MOB Piru Bloods. This gang affiliation proved to be detrimental for the next artists connected to the label. Tupac Shakur was a rapper who signed to Death Row Records in 1995. He was inducted into the MOB and started to claim the Bloods, to where he got an MOB tattoo and wore red bandanas. Tupac strictly done this due to his connection with Suge Knight, as Tupac grew up as a Black Panther, having no affiliation with gang banging. Tupac's mother, who was a member of the Black Panther Party, was arrested in April of 1968 in connection of conspiring with Black Panthers in New York to blow up buildings. Afeni Shakur was pregnant with Tupac while on trial and faced a prison sentence of 300 years. She was eventually acquitted of all charges. At the age of 17, Tupac became the chairman of the New African Panthers. Tupac's first business manager and founder of the New African Peoples, Watani Tai Himba, revealed what Tupac's motives were for his music. Tupac initially began in making revolutionary records exposing government and police corruption. After he joined Death Row Records in 1995 to suit the label, he changed his material into fake gangbanging, speaking about the Bloods and Crips and selling crack. Watani Tai Himba revealed that Tupac had told him and others that he was faking a gangster image in an attempt to take over the gangster rap genre with intentions of unifying the Bloods and Crips under what he called One Nation.
His business manager, Watani Tai Himba, confirmed to me that Tupac took on a fake gangster persona in order to appeal to gangs and then politicize them.
One Nation was Tupac's plan to build off of a gangster image and use his power to not only unify the Bloods and Crips, but also the East Coast and West Coast to then form a political party to take over the White House. Tupac spoke on this plan in one of his last interviews before being killed.
By the next election, I promise, I'm going to be sitting across from all the cats. God willing, I'm alive, we will have our own political party.
Tupac was fatally wounded during a drive-by shooting in Las Vegas on September 7th, 1996. This happened just hours after he was seen on the MGM Grand CCTV attacking Compton Southside Crip gang member Orlando Anderson on behalf of the MOB Bloods who were with him and Suge Knight in Las Vegas. Some believe the Crips killed Tupac in retaliation, while others such as Suge Knight claim that he believes the police gang members had some part in the incident.
And the sad thing about it, Orlando wasn't even the shooter, you know? Perez and them was all involved. They were trying to kill me too.
Takashi 6ix9ine is another example of a fake gangbanger of this current generation. Real name Daniel Hernandez, he grew up in Brooklyn, New York, being raised in a church. He was frequently selected as being the reader in the church, performing passages from the Bible. Before he started rapping, he worked at various jobs such as being a busboy and a delivery boy at a grocery store. He started rapping in 2012 and soon used his money to buy his way into the blood gangs of New York. Takashi's baby mother, Sarah Molina, has publicly stated that Takashi was never a gang member until he bought his way into the 9 Trey Gangsters. The 9 Trey Gangsters are an active blood gang in New York City, which was established in 1993 at the Rikers Island Jail Complex in New York. During the tail end of Iran-Contra, the gang were involved in the selling of crack from abandoned buildings in New York. Takashi and other members of the 9 Trey Gangsters were arrested on November 18, 2018 under the RICO Act. This is the Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act, which was used to take down the organized crime groups of the mafias of New York from the 1980s to the 1990s. Takashi faced life in prison, and in return, he agreed to cooperate with authorities where he snitched on the Bloods, exposing their operation. Takashi, after buying his way into the Bloods, was revealed to have adopted a gangster lifestyle and started to use his connections in attempts to murder other artists within the music industry, such as the 2018 shooting of artist Chief Keef, who Takashi revealed he offered $20,000 for it to happen. Takashi started labeling himself as the new Death Row, paying homage to Suge Knight and his blood connections. In this video, we took a look into how gang life was conditioned in America through several scandals and the privatization of the prison system. Culture formed within the prison system, then it tied itself onto the music scene, which forced artists into creating a fake gangster persona, which led to dire consequences as a result of being connected to the criminality. Let me know what your thoughts are on all this in the comment section below. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, then be sure to smash the thumbs up button. Also, don't forget to subscribe and press the bell button so you can get all the future notifications for when I upload. Once again, thank you so much for watching, and until next time, goodbye.